record. Okay, doesn't even give me a choice anymore. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Habatat Now. I'm your host, Aaron Shea, and I'm honored to have a longtime family member of Habatat, Daniel Clayman, joining us for our talk today. Dan is a master of the material. Dan is a master of light, and we are honored to have him. And I'll just wave to wave to Daniel right now to say hello to everybody.
Hi, everybody. And
hey, Dan.
It's so nice to see you.
Hi,
and
Dan.
Hi, Dan.
Hi, Dan.
Time to mute everybody. Hold on a second. Yeah, I'm going to ask to unmute you. Go ahead and click the unmute button, Dan. Daniel, go ahead and unmute yourself, and we'll have you talk if you don't mind. There you go.
Steve, in particular, I love seeing you all, but in particular, I owe Steve Lynn probably 3 letters, Christmas card, and Steve, we just have to do a Zoom so I don't have to write everything I have to tell you. It was one of those things where I said, I got to write Steve a letter. Oh, I can't, I don't have time. It's a long letter. I don't want to write him a short, stupid letter. So Steve, if you beg my forgiveness of you being the corresponder. So anyway, today I assume there are some people that don't know who I am or maybe haven't seen work lately, and I'm going to give somewhat of an artist talk, but I'm going to take a detour and talk about my time at University of the Arts. I think it's a good place to start that in 2017, I was introduced to the president of UArts, David Yeager, and we hit it off and he got really excited. Basically said, if you'll come here, we'll support you and we'll help you build a new, not only a new studio, small studio, we called it the boutique studio, but also a new kind of, he was giving me the opportunity to create a glass program as I wished it to be. And while we would have a hot shop, it wouldn't be hot shop centric, and the focus, now I don't know what the focus was going to be. In the end, it proved impossible due to a huge confluence of events. And then COVID finally put the nail in the coffin. And sadly, craft and material studies from University of the Arts, with the exception of fibers, and then ceramics will last somehow. But they've decided that the struggle for enrollment, as so many schools worldwide, art schools, are struggling. And it was a tough decision, but I don't want to say it was a good one, but it was a painful one, but one that a lot of schools are making now. And so I had a wonderful 3 years, and I will show you some slides about it. And I leave there with way more knowledge about myself, about my own work, I love teaching. The best part of it, of being a professor, is just dealing with these students. It was really, really an amazing time. So without further, I'm going to start.
Sure.
So I got to share my screen. And Aaron, I decided not to do a video because I have so much to share verbally.
Sounds good. There you go. We can see your screen. Go ahead and click on play or
all right,
whatever you do. Perfect.
So is the Zoom grid up in your image, or do it's just in mine?
Right now we see nothing. It says show navigator, so we might be on the wrong screen. I see that.
Oh,
button.
I see what happened. Let me stop sharing.
Yeah,
this happens sometimes.
Choose a different screen. That's what I assume is happening.
Yeah. How's that? You can see that now.
How about we kick out of it? We can see it without you pressing play. Oh, yeah. We can see you right now entirely. I'm going to end your spotlight while we do this. And
we fix this. Yeah.
Well,
sorry.
No
I
worries.
think I'd have this down. I've been teaching online for 14 months.
No problem.
So, Keynote. Let's see if that's going to work.
All right, we can see your slide, and we can only see it in the mini pictures if the play doesn't work.
Yeah, hold on. I think this will work by having it in this window.
Okay.
Did that
Voila.
work?
Yep, we're green.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. So I just put a title on this, Detours, because I took this massive detour in the fall of 18. And it wasn't without trepidation. I was commuting from Providence to Philly via Amtrak, but I'm back in the studio now, and here's the studio last week. Lots going on already. So here's an introduction to me. My father, mother at their wedding, the picture below it, my siblings, there's 6 of us, there's only 5 on that day. My current family, Terry, Molly, and Emma, and then Mia and Audrey Hepburn. And Mia is a brand new puppy to the family. It's been a crazy few years. It's been a crazy 4 years, but the last few years have been really wild. And while my work does not touch on political action, it certainly is informed by my daily life. And this was a protest. What was that protest? Defend democracy, impeach Trump. But it was one of many protests, Black Lives Matters, all sorts of things that my family went to. And this is Molly and Terry on that rainy night at the State House. My father went off to World War II. That's George with the red. He was in the Solomon Islands and got malaria and went to New Zealand, as shown in the map top right. So the whole war was raging all through that whole area. So he gets malaria, gets sent for hospital in Auckland, New Zealand, and I inherited his scrapbook. And on the lower left is his room card from I think it was 44. I'm pretty sure it was 44. So I found myself in Auckland a couple of years ago at a conference, and I went to the library and walked up to the desk, and there was this kid, like 25 years old, sitting at the reference desk, and I said, "Hey, my father was in the war, and he came here," and the guy was like, yeah, okay, what do you want? And the librarian said, "Oh my God, that sounds interesting. What do you want?" And so the head librarian comes over, and I gave her the spiel, my father, the war, and so she said, "Okay, come with me." I said, "He stayed at the Hotel Auckland. Here's a picture of his room card." And we couldn't find any mention of it, except finally in a PDF searchable database, which you can only access within New Zealand, of the main New Zealand paper. And there in yellow is Hotel Auckland at the corner of Custom Street and Queen Street. And this is it now, well, 3 years ago. It's now offices and stores down below. I show you that because it was an incredibly moving moment where I stood I hung out there for like an hour and walked up and down the sidewalk, and this intersection stops traffic. You're allowed to jaywalk because they stop at 4 ways. And I stood in the middle, and I somehow felt maybe there was like a molecule of my father still floating around. And I show you that because there's a connection to this work that I do now. This connection of memory and place in the world and time of day. I went to see Peter Pan at the Wilbur Theater in 1963. This is not the performance I saw, but we did see it with Mary Martin. And I, at 6 years old, had my first, oh my God, this is incredible. And it set the stage, so to speak, for a lifetime looking at things through a theater lens. My introduction to glass came from my father, who bought my mother Steuben objects for every anniversary. And on the big anniversary, the 25th, were the Steuben teardrop candlesticks, which I've inherited years ago, still in my house. So I'd already looked at glass, seen it a little, but there I was. I went off to college. I'm the product of 8 colleges, RISD finally. But I went to Connecticut College, where I majored in lighting design and dance, actually elementary ed and lighting design, technical theater. And after a year, I didn't want to be a teacher, elementary school teacher anymore, which is what I thought I'd wanted to do since I started elementary school. And I went out and began a career in the theater. And here's a quick graph: 1963, Mary Martin, Peter Pan. And in the 70s and early 80s, rock and roll touring for money, and not so much money, modern dance, regional theater, and opera. And in 1980, I was touring the country as a lighting designer. And by 1981, I was at Penland School studying glass, and in particular glass blowing. I was, as so many of us, the first time I picked up a pipe, I said, wow, this is for me, this whole, the materiality of glass. My first glass project that I did before that picture at Penland was the fire pot in the middle of this scene of Cyrano de Bergerac. That's a Photoshop flame, but the assignment was those soldiers are doing this at the beginning of the scene. The lights are down, everybody comes on stage, the lights go up, and the soldiers are warming their hand, and it fell to the electrical department because it was lighting, glowing from there. And I just said, I didn't know anything about glass. And I said, I wonder if I could, I didn't even use the word slump. I don't even know what I used. But I had a friend with a kiln. We took some kiln bricks. I knew to put some kiln wash, or I thought to, and then I took a piece of round plate glass, slumped it over the kiln bricks, and that gave me the basis of the charcoal brazier to paint. I painted it black, gray, red, and put a yellow light under, and it really, from the audience, looked like flame. So in and out of school, and finally at 26 or 7 years old, I go off to RISD, mainly blowing glass. And so this is just one slide of the blown glass I was doing junior year, because by junior year, I had phased away from glass blowing and started into casting. But my college was long and involved. I even ended up pre-med a few years later. 1994, when my kids were 3 or 4, I started pre-med at Providence College, and got a high A in pre-calculus, which surprised my wife. She thought I was going to fail. So when I said, I think I'm going to go to pre-med, she said, yeah, good. And then I came home with a high A, and she didn't think that was going to work. I didn't go to medical school, obviously. Chapter 2, some objects. And these handled objects were the first work that I was showing when I got out of college. So this is around 1980, 1990. I got out in 86. So 88 started showing, and by 90, 91 was making these. And you can see the influence of Michael Glancy. My first job out of college was as his assistant, and he taught me electroplating. All the time when I'm working, I tend to follow a thread, and then all of a sudden there will be no thread. The thread will go somewhere. So this is one of my favorite pieces that I've ever made. It's here in the studio. It's called osterone, and it's a Latin for bone. And it's a pelvic bone, but it's also a ladle. And I just love the simplicity. and the tension created by sitting it on that point. And this is circa 1993-4. This is a piece that celebrates materiality, and it celebrates it in a way that celebrates Pawtucket, Rhode Island too, the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, the knitting, the textile looms. So these are loom shuttles. On the left is basswood, on the center is glass, and in the right is a cast piece of bronze. And the centerpiece in glass, I always laugh because that was hand carved out of a piece of crystal that wasn't cast. I got a flat piece of crystal and with a Dremel, well, a pneumatic Dremel, just carved that thing and hand lapped it. And again, I like showing these pieces in a way that might frighten you. They're standing on the two little legs. In the mid-90s, I was working with bronze, which I hadn't done since I was in college. And while this is not a direct reference to fatherhood, there certainly was something about protection percolating within my head. So this was a series of work that lasted 3 or 4 years. And it lasted 3 or 4 years because these were the most difficult pieces to make that I made before and made since. It took 2 people doing wax work 4 to 5 weeks just to generate each wax model. So you had to have 2 people, one doing the glass, one doing the bronze, and then the fitting and the casting. And it was just a nutty process. I loved the work, could have gone broke making them. And then a few other pieces along the way. This really just talks, this is called bend, and it's just a simple illusion that the piece is held in tension, bent like that. It's actually built into that, that way. And you're going to begin to see a lot of work built out of modules. We lost Howard Ben-Trey this year, and I wrote his wife, Wendy, a sympathy note. And in this sympathy note, it said, I said to Wendy, when I walked into Howard's studio in 1984 in the Foundry building, something went off in my head, and he was a force of nature. And so I was really looking at Howard's work, and you'll see it was kind of one of the reasons scale began to attract me. But as I began to work larger, I realized, it hit me in the face, the bigger you cast, the more problems you have. And I mastered large scale castings for what I wanted to do, but I also got bit by this bug to build things in a modular manner. So this piece is built of, I think, 12 parts. I make objects, small objects, and these objects are based on lanterns that you might find in Nepal, and these stupas where these prayer temples that have this shape with a tall top. But for me, they were these objects, and they still are. I'm still making these periodically when I need time to sit at the workbench and just mellow out from everything that life has to throw us. These are just super pleasurable to make, and for my eye, beautiful, beautiful objects, small objects. So my theater life, I'm always looking at light, and I'm not really trying to manifest light. A lot of artists try to remake it, but I'm just trying to refer to it. And one of the interesting things about light is it doesn't show itself until it's reflecting on something. The only reason we're seeing this sunlight is there's dust in the air. You think about the space shuttle, it looks black, black, black in space, and then the space shuttle or the space station now comes flying in, or Elon Musk, his SpaceX machines, and everything looks black until something comes into the frame, and all of a sudden you see the light there's light there, it's just not reflecting on anything. So this is work from the early 2000s where I was playing with the idea of grabbing a beam of light from the sky. On the left is a piece called Pel, meaning fold, and it was generated after I started making these. I started taking index cards and just doing folded models like this. What happens if you just fold this? What happens if you curl it and then rip it? And so my desk was just covered with these type of things, littered with these. Again, what I wanted to make were large scale objects that look light, that had a feeling of delicacy. And I think I hit it on the nose, that these things were not more than an inch thick at the back and tapered to less than 1/4 of an inch. And they were perfectly sturdy, and they were cast as one piece into these. And that was not only nerdy necessary because I wanted to accomplish the technical stuff, but it is, I can't, let's try this. I don't have a cursor on this particular setup. But if you look at the piece on the left in the bottom half, you can see that it's kind of milky, and that has to do with how the melt happened. You couldn't make this out of sections and have that type of melt. And on the right, I reverted back to the solid because I love so all the glass in the piece on the right is the same glass, no different color. It just is thin to thick. And so that gives you a very different viewpoint of a beam of light dragged from the sky. Let's see, we're having a little, wow. Okay, and this is what it looks like with natural light on it, just in the back of the studio. And I just threw one picture in to show you how insane it is to make these molds, to make these big pieces. And this was one of the reasons I, at one point in the late 90s, early 2000s, had a really huge crew. I sometimes had as many 8 people working here. And it's not anything I want to do at this time of life. It was besides stressful, it took me away from making the work. 2007, I opened a show at the Mint Museum called White Light. And these were the objects from that. And this is where I really bit into building forms out of modules. Now, if we go back to this one, I said both of these were melted as one, and that's how the melt looks so beautiful. Here I'm at a very different point. If you can look at that white, it's all sorts of tones of white. And what I was after was as if I went to Carrara, to the marble quarry, and said, Giuseppe, I want things from the vein over there, and over there. I don't want all this marble to look the same. And so I called Bullseye Glass and I said, I need 4,000 pounds of white, and I want it to be compatible, but melted on different days. In fact, different years would even be better. And so here I am. If you look at the piece on the right, pierced volume, you can see that the blocks are varied. And on the left, you can even see, and the other thing the piece on the left really shows you is both transmitted light and reflected light. So this glass looks really white when you hit it with light from the front, and bring the light from the rear, and it's shades of whitish green, whitish pink, whitish blue, depending on the melt day. All the same chemistry, just depending on what was in the furnace before it. And these are a couple other pieces from that. 10-foot, the piece on the left is called Suspended Channel. And the guy on public radio in Charlotte said, well, I'm sitting here with artist Dan Clayman, and I think either we have a gutter from a roof or a bowling alley gutter in front of us on the computer monitor. It didn't hurt my feelings at all. In fact, I kind of loved it because it was posed 5 feet in the air. So a typical person that was 4'10" to 5'11" could really look right down the channel. So after white light, I continued on with this modular construction, and this is tall sliced volume. And this is a show that Habatat helped me, I guess they were the organizers at the Muskegon Museum of Art, and it was called Shift. And it was a group of objects that either by color, by form, by theme, were things that I didn't usually investigate in a linear fashion. And you might see the blue circle and say, well, you made some circles. This was the only real strong color circle that I made. And it stood out for me in that way. So you wonder, like, so what's Dan been doing for, like, besides like making objects? So I went off to teach, and we'll talk about that in a second. But those of you who teach full time know that it's really intense, because it's not just teaching. But these are some projects that I'm working on, that I've done, and then there's going to be some projects I'm working on. The reason my chapters are divided by this bucolic setting is I'm working on a project at Yosemite. So this is Color, and this was commissioned by the Swan Point Cemetery Association in Providence, Rhode Island. The assignment was something for contemplation, a place for contemplation. And the runner-up, and so there were 2 finalists, and the other one was, I think, an angel holding a baby in bronze. And the committee just couldn't get behind this symbol, this simple circle. Like, it's so simple. And I kept going back and saying, in this culture, it's continuity. This culture, we just kind of went at it for a while in a good way. And they gave me the commission. And at the opening, we had a big opening. And the chairman of the board came up to me and she said, Dan, you're a genius. And I got all puffed up like I'm a genius artist. And she goes, no, your piece is fine. But where you're a genius is that you kept at it with us, to inform us, to talk to us, to have us at the studio, to build when I gave my presentation, we went from the boardroom over here to the columbarium, and I had a full-scale foam core model in place where this was going to be, this beautifully constructed foam core model. And she said, I remember that foam core model, and that really turned my head. So this is Suspended Shadows. A couple came to me and said, would you make something for our house? And this works in some way as a sundial, because the windows to the right go back another 30 feet or so. And all through the day, that projection changes on the wall. Obviously, in the morning, you get no projection. But through the day, around 11 in the morning, the sun swings around where you can see that. And what I loved is that the husband and wife were bold enough to let me hang 270-pound sculptures above their friends' heads. Lest you think that's problematic, possibly, the rigging I used and worked with the engineer can hold 4,000 pounds. It's only holding up 170. Glass is strongest in compression, and the method I used depended on that. We pierced the piece with a hole, put a little fitting underneath, everything sits on the 4 fittings per piece, and it holds it in compression at that little area where the thing comes through, where the ball fitting comes through. It's pulling up on it, so it keeps it in compression. This was for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee. Again, they wanted a gathering space, and the art consultant had seen a circle. So I was invited to apply and made it through that. We're back to this picture of captured light because I'd been making all these castings and killing myself in the studio. And I said, I want to go big with captured light and I don't want to use glass. So this is tensioned wire with architect's tracing paper. This was at the Fuller Museum in Brockton, Mass. 2006, Mother's Day, it opened. And as I walked out the room, I turned and saw this exact view and said, I gotta think about making these in glass now. Back to glass, So Brown University, the Granoff Center for Creative Studies commissioned this piece for their 250th graduation. And it really is about memory, about passage of time. And if you look at the wall on the right, it's an ode to color field painting, my fave, the kind of painting that I'm most attracted to. You know, you walk up to an Yves Klein blue and it's just a field of blue, but you look at it and it's a labored over field of blue, shades and shades in that deep blue. As a side note, Yves Klein was, at 24, was working at an art supply store in Paris and couldn't find the blue paint he wanted. So he stole blue pigment and made his own. And that's why it's called Yves Klein Blue. So we have a yellow field that changes all day long. And this was the beginning of where I am in a lot of the work I'm doing now. So this is 2014. The project after that was Mass College of Art. I was teaching a seminar there and they had me give a lecture. And after the lecture, the director of the gallery said, Dan, I want you to do something in this new center we're opening next year. I want you to be the opening show. So this is it before it was occupied by anything. And let me see if I think I took a slide out. Bummer, I was trying to trim this. But what they thought they were going to get in here was something like I did at Brown. And it became evident that because of ADA, mainly because of ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, we couldn't do that. So I began thinking and I came up with this idea of Rainfield. And this is a digital mock-up of the first version. And then this is another digital mock-up. And we were going to make a Gothic Arch until about a week before install started. And the head of operations came in and said, those two areas on the right, the two flat areas at the bottom, they cannot come down to 10 feet above the floor. I said, say what? Because they were worried about man lifts and the fashion show that happens there. So when you raise that plane up to 15 feet and the top has to stay where it is, it's a stumpy Gothic arch. So I bagged the Gothic arch and remapped it. I got my crew together. We made 12,000 handmade raindrops over 7 weeks, 20 days over 7 weeks. We would gather twice a week and it was a great experience. And this is a recurring theme. The teaching I've been doing has supplied me with incredibly great young energy. Students in college are facing just such intensity because of the cost, health coverage. I mean, thank God for the exchange, the health exchange, but they're under tons and tons of stress, different types of stress than I felt like I was under in college. And I admire them. So this is Rainfield at Mass Art. 10,000 raindrops that describe a Roman arch. I am not the only one that has made a big sculpture out of pixelated elements. I don't even claim that this is the most original seed, but I brought it into this big field to describe architecture. At the very same time, two other artists, one in Turkey and one in France, was working on a similar theme. I got an email the day after this opened because it was in the Boston Globe. And I got an email from a curator in Texas, and she said, "Dear Dan," and I was thinking it was going to say, "I like the work," but what it said was, "You might want to look at these other two artists." And I was freaked out for about, I don't know, 12 seconds, 13 seconds, and then decided I'm getting older. I can't be freaking out about that kind of stuff. So we just work. We do what we do. These ideas come. Right after Rainfield opened, I had an appointment with the curator at Grounds for Sculpture. And we walked out of the main, we walked into the first building, and Tom Moran is his name. And he said, "Dan, I'm thinking about this gallery." I go, "Wow, that's great. If you've ever been to Grounds for Sculpture, the galleries are big and beautiful." And then he goes, "Well, let's go to the next one." And it was even more beautiful. But then, so we walk across the way, he goes, "But what I really want to show you is this." And this is the show that was in there. The show on the right is what was in there when I looked at the gallery, although this isn't the same snowy day. And he said, "What I'm thinking is all Clayman, the whole building, pie in the sky it." So, and he looks at me, "You want to do it?" I said, "Yeah, I want to do it." He said, "I need a proposal 6 weeks from today. Don't be late." So there were no digital files. I went down there and I surveyed it, made a pretty good, reasonable facsimile of the space in digital, in the digital space. And here it is, that same view as you walk here. This is a digital view of what I'm thinking about. And keep in mind that these renderings I do that you'll see are not meant to be realistic renderings. They're stylized on purpose. So this is looking down from the balcony. The digital tools are absolutely amazing, even though the work is handmade. This was two planes. On the left is the drape, and on the right, we called it the contracurve. And if anybody's interested, there's a full link on my website, danielclayman.com, that has a very nice video of how this was made. So another view, and this is what I was planning in the other end. And he got these, Tom got these, and I got an email that said, "Amazing." And then I didn't hear from him for 6 weeks. And I got to say, I mean, you guys who know me, I'm a little neurotic, and I like to worry. So I'm like, what is he doing? He's not calling me. And finally he calls me back and he goes, "I need a budget 6 weeks from today. Don't be late. Nice to talk to you." A great guy. I'm making him sound like he's a really great guy, but it's working like this. Don't be late. So I drew up the budget and they approved the whole budget. And I came to him while working on it and I said, "I don't think I have time to do this end of the building. I think I'm going to put some big, large scale castings there." And he said to me, "I went to bat. I went to the board. They funded this fully, your whole request. You have to do what you set out to do. I'm making you do it." So I did. So this is what it became. It's meant to be a moment. Anytime you walk in there, day, night, nighttime, it's got a little bit of light on it. Daytime, it looks beautiful in the sun. It looks beautiful on a gray day. The opposite end, I took that huge structure out and put in Blue Horizon. And this is an ode to Yves Klein blue paintings. Why do I like those paintings? I like that you have to bring your own information to every single little spark of that. A contemporary color field painter, Joe Marioni, Paul Marioni's brother, who's very famous in Europe, not quite so famous here. beautiful paintings in the style of the color field painters. And this is Tom and I after dinner looking in. It looks like it might be a rendering, but it's not. It's us and it's a photograph. And to me, it looks like the closing of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where the camera pans back and you see a warehouse full of artifacts. So I'm working on the landscape project, which started, there should be a little title here that says, thank you to Tyler School of Art. I got a residency at Tyler for a year in 2013. And the only stipulation of the residency was that I was not allowed to do anything that I had already done. I had to do new work. And in exchange, all I had to do was give a lecture every Wednesday. I was there 1 week a month. I had to give a lecture on Wednesday, and otherwise I had full run of the joint. So I went down to a boulder farm in Stonington, Connecticut. Why a boulder farm? When they're clearing the land since 1680, they schlep all the boulders to a corner so they can plow the land. They used to do it with oxen. This is 400 acres, and Mike continues to clear the land, but now with his tractor. We took a boulder and I developed a mold process, and looking at the topography of the boulder, all the little ridges, I divided it up into 257 parts. So you can look at here and it says like part 632. That doesn't mean 632nd part, it means plane face 6, part 32. And for some reason, I love to keep track of information, and this required oodles of information of where things went, where things are oriented. So here's a load firing. So you make the mold, mark the mold, put the glass in, everything's been calculated to be the right thickness. And then God forbid you should take these out before they're marked. So they're marked with those paint pens, so we can do all our cold work without losing the mark. It took me until the third of the 3 boulders to realize I could have just engraved the piece of glass as it came out of the mold on the glue seam and it wouldn't have mattered. So this is Kobe and I putting the first boulder together. This is the last plane going on. And this was a labor of love from 2013 to 17. It took up the bulk of my studio time. And this is what they looked like. So there was copper, gold, and silver, but top secret, not top secret. The silver one is actually white gold because the silver looked like aluminum foil. These ended up being chosen to go to the Beijing Biennial in spring of 19. So they traveled over there, got some really great press over there, and then they're back in the studio ready for their next showing or their home. So 2017, November, during SOFA, I get invited to a dinner. A collector's there, I'm sitting with him. He's on the board at UArts, and some UArts glass was going through a change of leadership. And the collector turned to me and said, "Do you teach?" And I said, "Yeah, I teach." He said, "Could you send me your CV?" Absolutely. Send him the CV. The president calls me on Sunday night, and I end up being the first endowed chair, the Ephron family endowed chair in glass studies at the university. And I'm 60 years old taking a major detour, like crazy talk. So this is that same building, which was then the deaf and dumb asylum. In 1850 on Broad Street, the building still stands as it is. There it is, it's wild. And there's one of my blackboards. We're talking about annealing and strain relief and what else we got up there? Decolorants, manganese, melting, Abby's phone number. Anyway, typical blackboard with my blackboard scribble. if any of you glass hounds remember, Scholl's Modern Glass Practice is still the Bible. It's out of print by many years, but still the Bible. Okay, I want you all to just laugh amongst yourselves because I got to teach, I had to blow glass. And I blew glass for 7 years, full-time 7 years, from 1979 to 1985. It was my thrust in life until I discovered other processes and other ideas. So I got back on the stick, and this is us working on a piece of Fred Call. And this is my post back. On the left is Abby Myers. And since we had so few students, I set about bringing postbacks in to study casting, not to study for a degree. She already had a degree, but to study casting. So we had a very modest studio, and the idea was to build a new studio. So this is our cold shop. And like the belt sander, you know, everything was problematic, but we were all excited to get beyond problematic. And if you just pull the camera back, the cold shop's on the left, but the glass classroom's on the right, and the kiln shop is way in the back. That's our whole kiln shop, 3 front-loading kilns. So I got there knowing I had my work cut out for me, but as many of you know, when I took the job, I was beyond excited. I got my own apartment in Philly. Terry and I lived apart 3 nights a week, and we were cracking up over it. It was just a fun time, and I just love being around students. It's a whole other thing. You know, we're in the museum world, the commercial gallery world, there's so much stuff to worry about that is not purely about making the work. And when I'm teaching, I drop all that stuff away and we really focus on the work. And I'm going to show you my favorite thing that was made by a student in a few minutes. So, and this is our one furnace. That's Abby feeding the furnace. And as you can see, we have another kiln shoved in the corner. There's a little pickup oven, but there's like no space. That's the whole hot shop. That's it. But I can tell you now, after experiencing this, yes, we wanted to build a new hot shop. Yes, we wanted a new glass center. And the reason I wanted that is if we were going to have a glass major, I just didn't think it fair or possible to attract students when so many other schools had these, never mind the behemoth shops. I just wanted something modernized and safe, and we were all on it. And I worked with the architects. I taught full-time, got settled full-time, and worked with the architects full-time to design the new studio. And this is the cold shop that we had designed, long and skinny. And this is the hot shop we had designed, long and skinny, 2 glory holes, I think 1 furnace, but a separate furnace. Do you see on the upper left, there's a balcony? We were going to become the first academic studio probably in the world. I don't know any in Asia. I mean, I don't know any in America, in North America, Western Hemisphere, Europe, but we were going to have a bottom feed furnace so that you can drive your mold right under the furnace. And everybody was excited. So what happened to that? It became evident that enrollment was low, not just with us. This is a worldwide problem for art schools right now. And we had a ton of meetings and we kept going at it, and we were still going to do something, and then COVID hit. And COVID changed the landscape, as you know, at hundreds of colleges. So let's just put that to rest. I had a great 3 years there. I don't regret going there. I loved it. I made great friends. I learned so much about the world, but more importantly, I learned a lot about myself and how I interact with the world. Because keep in mind, I was like the rest of you artists. I'd spent since 1987 in my studio mostly every day. I never had to go to a meeting about curriculum or a credit problem or something. So I leave there kind of resettled and ready to start again. And I'm feeling good. The sad thing is we sponsored the Borowski Prize for 7 years for upcoming artists. And my first year, so being the head of glass, I was one of the organizers. I was probably, I guess, the chief organizer with a group of 3 people. And then we had a committee, I think, of 14 and we got lots of applications each year. And this is Sarah Breeland from Kentucky. And she's had a great year, a couple of years. She was featured in that new Glass Now. She's on the cover and she makes work about the landscape and working within the landscape. She has a wonderful picture of her playing in a mud, maybe it's not a picture. She has a picture of the quarry or dirt place she used to dig in. So she's a woman of the landscape. And then Simone Fizzer from Europe, I think she lives in Germany, if I remember. She was our 2019 Borowski Prize winner. And there she is at the bench. You can see how small the shop is. And she was a force of nature, as you can see by her piece, Flowering Out into the World. Check her Instagram feed, Simone Fizzer, really good. And this is us helping Simone. And I just want to show you, like, it was so much fun working with students because we're always making something weird. Always doing something. The visiting artist program, which was the best part of my time at RISD as a student, I really kicked that up. I think we had my three years there, including Zoom visiting artists. I think we had 15 visiting artists in that short 3 years. So this is Fred Call, the great Fredini. And there he is at the glory hole. And this is what's in the glory hole, an amalgamation of like 12 or 10 castings of diamond castings. So it's in the glory hole. We've taken these big diamonds one by one with one of those killer torches and right at the right time, put it on and keep it hot. And it worked perfectly. But when you're in a student situation, things are not always good. And this is the Fred's, we worked for 2 days on these, and this is 2 of these. Something happened to the annealer. And I happen to have Peter Bremers on my screen, and I think maybe Peter screwed that up or something. I don't know, Peter. Maybe you stepped in, I don't know. Somebody screwed that annealer up. And then Fred brings this centrifugal casting machine, and there's Deshaun, one of my students. He was a wood student that was a minor in glass, and maybe not an official minor, but took some glass classes. And he was one of those kids that was just like, oh my God, this material is crazy. So let's look at this little quick video. So it's spun and centrifugal force spins the glass out, and there's one of the pieces hot out of the mold, ready to go into the annealer. And then there's the pieces on the workbench the next couple days later. They're quite beautiful. Again, I just had all these visiting artists. I'm just showing you a couple. And there's that same picture. I just thought it was, you'll never see me like this again, probably. So I thought it was worth showing again. I still love blowing glass. I still have nothing I want to make in blown glass. And I just love, so I was the king of demos, but I was the king of demo failures. Every demo I gave, I would like, I blew a cylinder and it would fall off the punny. And I'd say, you know how that's supposed to go. It actually should have gone into the kiln. Or I make a goblet and the stem cracks off. Well, you know how that should go. Or the only demo that I did that was perfect, I hadn't done that Swedish overlay technique to then throw the bubble over the bubble to reverse the color. I hadn't done it since 1985. And somebody who knew how to blow glass happened to stop in and said, "Whoa, you're killer." And it was the only demo all year that worked. All 3 years. This is Cooper O'Brien, a young man recently graduated from Tyler, and he brought all these molds that we blew into. So you blow into the mold and then you chip the mold off and you have this wildly formed surface, and that's stretched out, and Cooper spent 3 days with us. We're always doing something at art school. And on the left is somebody in the middle of the assignment. Make a mold with this archival mold material that will not ruin the stone or the cement, whatever it is. Find somewhere on campus and make a mold of it. So somebody's making a mold of that face. And on the right, art school is the only place where you can engage in an hour-long conversation on a piece like this, because it's not just lampwork flowers. It belongs to a suite of objects about memory. And a long conversation about corsages squished in a book, prom. In this case, the student's mother was a big gardener, flower gardener. And on the left is a student's work, Carly Leeming. It's ceramic. It's ceramic fiber paper dipped in porcelain slip. And this thing is big. It's as big as a Karen Lamont dress. So I put Karen Lamont there because I said, Carly, you got to look at this artist who works this way. So, you know, just endless stuff. And we worked during pandemic. I taught glass at UArts I taught glass for UArts from my studio computer, just like now, every day since March 6th, 2020. We had everything by meetings, and I taught an introduction to glass casting. First half was more hot kiln processes. Second half of the semester was pot de verre molds. And the students sent their molds to me via UPS. I returned the pieces UPS. And this is Rakaya's piece. She didn't wrap it well enough and it got destroyed on the way. This was her core press mold for pot de verre. But lest you think we couldn't do it, this is another student's. On the left is the real grapefruit rind, and on the right is the pot de verre grapefruit rind. But actually on the left is the pot de verre grapefruit rind. We had a grapefruit rind that was just left out. We took a mold of it, and then we made these press molds, and this was one of the students' first attempts. And you couldn't tell the difference of the outside. So we were, even though we had a bunch of mishaps, we did great. And I was super proud of the students. And then the other great thing about teaching in Philadelphia was field trips. And this is a quick video of Outcast Studios, Greg Nangle in Philadelphia, PA.
You're on the door, you got your little thing. If I need it, we'll see what we can, all right, Jake?
He's knocking the glass off so as not to waste it. He's knocking it back off into the furnace. So this is the only graduation I got to do. The professor only got 2019 because everything else has been online. And this was the Craft and Materials Studies Department graduation 2019. And these were my first two graduates, Zach and Kate. And they stayed as alumni residents for a year. And this is one of Kate's thesis pieces, a glass swing that she was able to swing in. Kate grew up in the foster care system, and everything about her work was about finding a place to be, because she shared in something like 9 foster families in her teen years. And we became very close friends, because this was a kid who could have maybe been bitter. And this is a very positive young woman who is now going off to VCU to study with Jack Wax for graduate school. And then this is my one graduate this year. This is Sam. And I'm going to ask you to allow me to show you this 3-minute video. I've got permission to tell you this story. Sam was struggling sophomore and junior year, terribly struggling. And we got to the end of junior year, and I was like, Sam, I don't know what we're going to do here. We've got to really get some down. And she said, no, I'm going to do this. And we talked over the summer a lot, and we got to school in the fall, and something had happened senior year, which frequently happens senior year. And she was writing a book, and she started doing some illustrations, and Sam and I had the privilege of the old style tutor situation. Since she was my only student, I got to meet with her 6 hours a week, between 4 and 6 hours a week. And we really hammered it out. So throughout all this struggle, she began to meditate, practice bhakti yoga, and really was influenced, and it helped center her. So I want to show you her thesis. I'm only going to bore you with one thesis project. It's 3 minutes long. It's called Journey. Oops, sorry. Oh, can you see this new window, Aaron?
We can see a new window. It's just gray right now.
Let me see if this will work. Can you see that?
Nope, not yet. All we see is a gray window. Now we see you.
Hold on. I'm coming back.
All right, something's moving now.
Okay, I'm going to start it at the beginning, and here we go. Can you see this?
Yep.
These are between 2 inches square and 4 inch square, high fired enamel and silver stain on glass. I got to share again somehow. Let's see. I don't want that. Oh, let's see. I'm trying. Oh, there we go. Okay. So if everybody could unmute your mic and say, because I think Sam's on here, if you could say happy graduation to Sam, it would be great.
Happy graduation.
Happy graduation. Happy graduation.
Your work is lovely.
Happy graduation, Sam!
Happy graduation.
Congratulations, Sam.
Yes.
Happy graduation. Like a
dream. Congratulations, Sam.
Congratulations. Wonderful
Okay.
work.
So,
Wonderful progress.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Thanks for sharing. Thank you for sharing.
can you see in progress?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, good. Let's just finish up now. I'm having some troubles. Okay. Right now I'm working on a project that I got in 2017-18, but it went on hold because of the steel tariffs that our previous president put in. The price of steel went up so high, we had to put it on. The feds put it on hold. So this is the Ashley Federal Courthouse in Toledo. And to the left, as we're looking at it, is a new addition is going on. And I'm going to just truck through this quickly. This was the first lobby, and I had the whole thing just shy of peer review. And this was my solution. It had to do with transparency of justice and all sorts of things. But as we were going, could you guys turn your mics off? Bird, you especially. There you go. Thanks, Bird. So we get a stop order on this, and the building is redesigned, and I'm just going to jam through this. This is the new building. And part of what I'm doing is making something that glows at night. This is based on Rainfield, but we take the pediment and extrude it. And the idea here, it's raindrops. We don't know what the raindrops are going to be yet. They might be more architecturally in cast. But the idea is feet on the ground, eyes in the sky. So this is a federal district court. It's frequently not the most pleasant time you're having. And the hope is that you come out, you keep your feet firmly on the ground and get through this horrible day, possibly, but you get a little bit of relief by looking up to this field. After lots of talks with the architects, we decided that the architectural pediment extruded was going to be too interruptive to their architecture. So now I'm working on a scheme where the idea is to create wind-blown modules of raindrops where it just looks like it's undulating going down, and there will be islands. And, you know, this has to do with tight budgets and all sorts of things, but the big thing I wanted was something light and airy, not, ugh. I'm working, and I have been working on this project for 6 years, where this is Yosemite from my trip there last 2 falls ago. Carolyn Landau, who is my West Coast project manager, lest you think that's a fancy title and a lot of money. I met her at Penland. She saw my lecture and said, "I'll work for you for nothing." And so she's in the Bay Area and was great. She arranged this trip. And if you see this little orange rectangle, I want to take that much of Al Cap's wall and turn it into, this is what that wall would look like, and turn it into something like the boulders, where there's a 20-foot by 30-foot expanse in the gallery. So that's piece number 1 for almost accessible. Piece number 2 is a moon rock that is being scanned and is about this big. Everybody knows you couldn't take a big moon rock back. There was no, you couldn't fit it, no weight allowance. But this is going to be scanned and made into a large moon rock out of glass with the same techniques that I did for the first boulder. And let's see. And then the third idea was the rock formation. You look at those climbers up on Everest, and the rock formation where there's a red suited climber is called Hillary's Step. And that's getting scanned from outer space to a resolution as small as a pebble. So there's scanning services that are just crazy, which will give you a 3D scan. Now, lest you've been at this lecture 5 years ago, Dan, any progress? There is progress on every front. Slow progress on every front. I labeled this a 10-year. So when I was out at Yosemite, I'm walking down the path to find the superintendent's office, and I stop a man. And I said, "Hi, do you know where the superintendent's office is?" And he goes, "Well, down the corner. But I'm the superintendent if you want to talk to me." So I said, "I got this idea I'm working on. I'm a sculptor." He said, walk with me. I got a 15-minute walk ahead of me. So I walked with him, and he got to where he was going. He turned to me and he said, "Here's my card. Here's the 2 people I want you to be in touch with. While I'm not sure we can do this project because of permitting and does it get scanned? Does it get a mold made with rock climbers?" He said, "I am very interested in this. Let's keep talking." So I call that progress. So I'm working on this idea called Orbital Traces. It's a large piece that's 18 feet in diameter. It has LEDs, and the idea is as you walk into the room, and a proximity sensor lowers the ambient light and starts seeing where you're looking. And a trail of light will go 6 feet on this circumference. So it's not just a third of it, because the circumference is really long. So you'll get a trail of light that wisps. And what I'm trying to get visually is a sound of whoosh as things travel through space. And does it make a noise? I don't know if things make a noise in space. So that's so this is part I can't hear. Aaron. So this is the computer modeling we're working on. Remember the rock and roll lighting. Just all of this keeps coming forward. How am I going to make an 18-foot diameter structure? It's really not intimidating to me. I'll figure it out. So this is the structure that's going to be in steel. It's in modules about 30 inches long. The modules bolt together and the glass is cast and just attached to it with one screw and a silicone cushion. And we're making the quarter scale model. We're making so if it's 18 feet, what is it? 4.5 feet in diameter. And these are the parts being printed on my 3D printer in the studio. And these are all these parts that this wonderful young assistant, I got an intern from the International Yacht Restoration School, Malcolm Kriegel. He's been studying digital technology there, and he needed an internship. He also graduated from Tulane in glass. So he's been with me, and there is a time lapse of Malcolm working yesterday on the model framework, and the whole thing is working so far just beautifully. Just yesterday, we got this much done. So now he's sheathing it with the glass, but these are plastic, but with the glass samples. And there I am looking at something. And there's a nice little shot, a static shot of the framework. And I just want to thank you to both Malcolm and Emmett Barnacle. And I chose a picture of Emmett's to finish with. Emmett studied casting at RISD. He's a Rhode Islander forever. And lighthouses are part of our vernacular. And I'd like to thank the University of the Arts because I got a lot of, I just was able to do a lot more experimental work and bring these projects forward because I was working somewhere. I'd never had a salary before, a paycheck. So I really thank University of the Arts for employing me and allowing me to have the space to push forward with this stuff. And with that, I know this was longer than we contracted, Aaron, but sorry. That's it. Thank you. I got to go because the Red Sox are starting. I'm just kidding. And I'm happy. I don't know if we do questions.
Yes, anybody's welcome to ask Dan a question. A lot to take in, I must admit. That was an amazing presentation. Thank you, Dan, for sharing with us and your experiences. And I'm looking forward to seeing you up on that cliff face, making a mold. It's going to be fantastic when you...
That's not going to be me.
Oh, yeah, it is. Well, this is great, and I appreciate it all. Dan and I will be working on a collection of available work that we'll be sharing with all of you and through our newsletter system. We jumped right in to the presentation today, which is great. So we missed some of the whole housekeeping, which is fine. We'll cover next time. But Dan, it's amazing to have you here today, and great to get all these aspects of what your career led to. Great seeing photos of you from your youth with your fro and your sideburns. Those are great too. I hope to get some of those shots in my personal collection of you. But beautiful work. I'm looking forward to seeing what you do next. And I'm definitely interested in seeing how you're going to use this eye tracing technology. I've seen something like that done in the gaming world, I think, but I've never seen it in art. So that should be quite interesting. So,
you know, Aaron, you bring up a good point, the gaming world. UArts has a very robust, I don't know if there's a game design department, but within the Department of Design is all of that digital technology. And even though I won't be working there anymore, it's a great laboratory for me to learn from.
Right, and dive into and meet some people who can, you can work with to do this kind of sculpture. That's going to be cool.
Any really questions for me?
So most common people in the comment are just overall impressed with you.
Yeah, it was great, Dan.
Thanks, Ferd.
Dan, email me your phone number. I'll call you tomorrow. That way you can get relief from
from my guilt.
From your guilt.
Yeah.
I have unlimited calling to the United States for free. So
just, cool.
Dan, I just want to say you're a fantastic inspiration. You've always been. I love your work. I love you. And thank you for even honoring me to be able to sabotage you in any way.
and just so everybody knows, that was a complete off-the-cuff, wise-ass comment.
But, of course.
And I just want to thank everybody and for coming today. And I want to just really thank the students of mine who showed up today. We really bared down, and I learned as much from them as they did from me, I hope. So Kathy, hi, honey.
Hi. Nice to see you. We miss you and Jerry. You'll have to come visit us again.
I would love to.
Yeah, that's the plan. We're planning for our physical exhibition here in September at the gallery. We'll inform you all of the details of that very, very soon. And again, thank you, Dan, for being here today. It's an honor to have you. And we'll be sharing this on YouTube. So please get the word out, share the talk. I'm sure there's plenty of people who missed it because they're enjoying the day out today and we'll have to catch it later tonight or during the week. But these videos are a great way of reaching the community and sharing the word of the work and the people we all love. Hope to see everybody live in person soon, especially you, Dan.
Thank you. Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye-bye,
Dan.
everybody. Have a great
Nice to see everybody.
weekend.
Thanks,
Thanks,
I'm
Dan.
gonna email you.
Miss
Bye,
everybody.
Brian.
Hey, Dan.
Wishing you good sleep,
Fabulous.
Aaron.
Thanks,
Thank you
guys.
all.
Thanks.
Hey, Professor.
Great
I
day,
see you.
everyone. Have a wonderful day. Thank you. It was a
All right.
pleasure.
Thank
It's
you.
good meeting you, Sam. Good seeing you, Emmett. Take care, guys.
See you, Dan.
Bye now.